Our story begins in the middle of a frozen battlefield. Our protagonist, Ash, stands his ground, surrounded by bodies and swords stuck in the ground, showcasing the intensity of the combat. Right after, a powerful voice calls out his name as heavy snow continues to fall on the scene. Faced with the situation, the imposing figure of Roderick appears, asking Ash why he's there. After all, he was supposed to be in command of the Eastern Subjugation Force. Because of this, Ash, visibly wounded, responds with a determined look that his goal was precisely to take down the man before him, revealing a deep tension between the two. Then Roderick, his eyes fixed on Ash, seems to mull over the young man's words as a red aura of power envelops our protagonist. With that, Ash raises his blood-stained sword and accuses Roderick of planning to use his squad as bait, only to discard them without a second thought. In a close-up, we see Ash's face, covered in battle wounds, as he screams the name, Father, highlighting the complicated and painful relationship he has with Roderick. From there, Roderick confirms his son's accusation, stating that this was the sole purpose for someone, wingless, calling him his foolish son. Meanwhile, Ash's eyes fill with rage, and the narration reveals his full name, Ashe Elmheim, cranking up the drama of the moment. Soon, the crest of the Elmheim family, a martial house that serves as protectors of the royalty, appears majestically, representing the legacy and honor at stake. In turn, Roderick is seen sitting on a throne, reminding everyone that he is the sole wielder of the 7 wings in the country, flaunting his power and status. With that, a flashback takes us to an earlier moment where Roderick rescues a near-gone Ash in the middle of a fierce blizzard, revealing a past built on gratitude. In that moment, the wounded Ash from the memory reflects that he did everything to repay that debt, dedicating himself completely to return the favor. However, in another flashback, our protagonist is shown fallen and beaten up, while others mock him, indicating cruel and disrespectful treatment. One of them taunts Ash, calling him a wingless, crestless brat, and our protagonist laments not having the quings needed to prove his worth to his father. From Roderick's point of view, the crest defines magical power, and the more wings, the stronger the person's magic. Our protagonist, the only one in the Duke's house without magic, was seen as defective because of it. With his hand firm on his sword, Ash remembers his brothers who called him quingless, because he couldn't use spells. Meanwhile, our protagonist was working his tail off, chopping wood and doing push-ups, believing his dedication would one day pay off and be rewarded. Because of this, Ash and 2 other companions are patrolling a snow-covered forest, staying on guard in a hostile environment. Right after, our protagonist hides behind a tree, his yellow eyes glowing with alertness as he senses imminent danger. From there, Ash sees several enemies emerging and wonders if this is an ambush, realizing something bad is about to happen. Faced with the situation, Ash confronts Roderick, expressing that he had always believed in and followed him until that moment, and asks if this was the answer he gets. With a cold stare, Roderick retorts that a tool doesn't expect anything, and if Ash's role is over, he should simply disappear. In a close-up, we see Ash's bloodied face, looking shocked by his father's harsh words. At the same time, Ash is sent flying through the air, and even so, he still screams his father's name, showing his pain and confusion. Even wounded, with his face covered in blood, Ash still asserts that he truly believed in Roderick. Feeling the betrayal deeply, Ash is then thrown across the snow-covered ground again, cursing himself, realizing how foolish he was to trust him. Meanwhile, Roderick appears with a smirk on his face and a trail of blood on his chest. He was responsible for all of his son's suffering. Soon after, Ash is caught by chains of energy, and 2 more opponents attack him mercilessly, taking advantage of his vulnerability. Because of this, our protagonist is hit by several blows, unable to defend himself, completely cornered by his attackers. Our protagonist screams in pain, blood running down his face as the red chains bind him tightly. Right after, one of Ash's brothers scoffs, calling him slow and wingless as he lies wounded in the snow. The 3 brothers look down with cruel smiles, stating that our protagonist's miserable state suited him perfectly. Lying on the ground, Ash wonders why Roderick rescued him if he planned to toss him aside anyway. At that, Roderick crouches down and tells Ash not to get his hopes up, because he was never of any use to him. At the same time, Roderick grabs Ash's hair with one hand, revealing his cruelty and contempt. With that, Roderick reveals that what he wanted was the power of the dead wings that resided within our protagonist's body. Shocked and wounded, Ash with wide eyes wonders about these 7 wings his father mentioned. Next, Roderick comments that Ash's mother was very useful for his plans, with a look of pure coldness. The villain explains that our protagonist's mother gave birth to a seed, like him solely for his benefit, with Ash still lying on the ground. At this, Ash reaches out his hand desperately, pleading for Roderick to wait and explain what he's talking about. Because of this, Ash yells at Roderick, demanding answers, with anger and pain mixed in his eyes. Meanwhile, our protagonist's hand trembles from cold and weakness, feeling his life slipping away. Then, Ash wonders if he's going to bite the dust right there and questions why he lived for so long, showing his despair. Further in the distance, an image of a snow-covered church appears, a symbol of hope or perhaps a lost past. Our protagonist feels like he's in a place of pure whiteness with a slight sensation of warmth. With that, he wonders if this is the afterlife, then notices the snow falling around him. In this moment, Ash, now a baby, looks at the world with surprise, his eyes curious and alert. He's being held by an indistinct figure, realizing he's a baby. From there, our protagonist, in his baby body, widens his eyes and understands that this is reality. He questions what on earth is going on, looking around in confusion amidst the snow. Soon after, Ash wonders if this tiny body is really his, feeling strange. Meanwhile, he observes his own tiny hand in disbelief, realizing he's a real baby. Ash is in a woman's arms, and he wonders if she might have passed, noticing her stillness. His baby eyes shine with determination, and he thinks search, as if activating a skill. In his adult form and on horseback, Ash commands a search for the woman in the intense blizzard. At the same time, one of Roderick's soldiers states that they must rescue the baby she took. At this, our protagonist, as a baby, lets out a smile, showing he might have understood something. Shocked, the adult Ash wonders what he just heard and why they mentioned Duke Roderick. Finally, he floats as a baby, realizing that Duke Roderick is after him and questions if he is the baby they're looking for. Ash wonders if he went back to the past but dismisses the idea as absurd, focusing on the baby in his arms. Then, the baby stirs in the woman's arms, and Ash decides to check on that later. However, Ash realizes that if he stays there, he'll certainly fall into the Duke's family's hands. Because of this, baby Ash drags himself through the snow, his eyes shining as he looks for a way out. He understands that he needs to get as far away as possible, using all his strength to move. From there, baby Ash crawls in the snow, his hands glowing in a desperate effort. Inwardly, he thinks, "Darn it," feeling the difficulty in breathing and his fatigue growing. With that, Ash laments that his limbs are burning up, highlighting the difficulty of the situation. He predicts he'll have a life of crawling again, but with a glint of determination in his eyes. Thus, Ash tells himself that he will survive, no matter what, showing his resilience. Looking at the image of Roderick, Ash swears he will get his revenge, his determination clear. Baby Ash crawls in the snow, hands glowing, his will to live unshakable. He continues crawling, leaving a trail in the snow, moving away from the imminent danger. Soon after, a girl appears and baby Ash watches her, noticing her presence. The girl then calls for her father, a man who introduces himself as being from the Viscount Hyfried family. The man, the girl's father, wonders why there would be a baby in such a cold and dangerous place. Then baby Ash nestles into the man's embrace, showing trust and comfort. Viscount Hyfried, still surprised, murmurs a baby, looking at the little one. He observes the trail in the snow and wonders if the baby crawled that whole distance by himself. With that, the Viscount holds Ash in his arms, thinking about how special this child is, full of admiration. Baby Ash is now in a crib, and his eyes open, showing his awareness. At this, the Viscount wonders where he is, while baby Ash starts to stir. A childlike figure, with wings and golden feathers, approaches, and our protagonist is captivated by her. He thinks this child came to find him, looking like an angel, with her eyes shining. Then, baby Ash lets out a whimper, moving in the crib, showing he's awake. Because of this, a few girls crowd around Ash's crib, excited about the newly awakened baby. The white-haired girl warns the others not to play pranks on the baby, as they could hurt him. Ash in the crib wonders what the heck is going on, confused by the noisy situation. The white-haired girl holds Ash, who makes a face of disgust as the girls are squeezing him. With a chimef, Ash complains and the girls are startled by his reaction. The irritated baby Ash crawls away, and the girls chase after him, laughing at the situation. Our protagonist wonders why they're running after him, not understanding the game. Then, baby Ash prepares to use some kind of skill, his hands glowing with energy. His eyes shine intensely, concentrating his power for the next move. With that, Ash thinks, "I'm gonna fly," and a powerful jet of energy propels him upwards. He wonders if that is magical power, startled by the force he just unleashed. At this, baby Ash loses control, realizing he's falling back to the ground. At the same time, Viscount Hyfried, the girl's father, catches him in mid-air, preventing his fall. He comments that it's strange for a child to fall from the sky, finding Ash to be a mysterious boy. Ash, shocked, recognizes the man, his eyes wide with surprise. It was Duke Roderick's older brother, Viscount Hyfried, who holds him in his arms. The scene shows the grand and wealthy home of the other branch of the Elmheim family. We see a portrait of Viscount Hyfried A. Elmheim, the current head of the family. He was known as one of the two wings, who was on par with Roderick, his younger brother. Ash recalls that Viscount Hyfried was supposed to have perished in the Civil War a long time ago. Ash reflects on the ironic fate of trying to escape Roderick only to end up being found by his older brother. The red-haired woman who was holding Ash asks if he flew because he lost control of his magical power, suspecting he wasn't a normal baby. The woman then looks at our protagonist with a gentle smile, showing great affection for the little one. She comforts him, saying he must have been scared, but now he's completely safe in her arms. Baby Ash stares at her with a fixed, confused look, unable to fully understand her words. Meanwhile, Viscount Hyfried looks at the woman with a calm smile, perhaps of relief or gratitude. With his hand outstretched and glowing, the Viscount senses the great power hidden within the child. The woman reveals the mark of wings on Ash's arm, which proves the innate magic he carries. Viscount Hyfried observes the mark, intrigued, wondering if those could be the legendary 7 wings. Our protagonist, as a baby, wonders why this special mark was on his own body. At this, Ash gets a flash of his own glowing eyes full of fury and shock, followed by a sudden understanding. Roderick's voice echoes in his mind, explaining that he needed the power of the 7 wings that resided within Ash. A scene shows Roderick holding a young Ash, and then again in the frozen past, confirming a rescue. Ash understands that Roderick took him in only to steal the 7 wings, scoffing at the wingless nickname he was given. Baby Ash in the woman's arms remains furious, thinking how dare Roderick steal his own wings. Concerned, the woman asks Viscount Hyfried what he will do with the baby. Ash thinks the situation is bad. He can't let his power fall into the Elmheim's hands. He reflects that he needs this power to get his revenge on Roderick, showing his determination. Faced with the situation, Viscount Hyfried decides to adopt him as his son, with a look of compassion. Baby Ash stares at him in surprise, his curious eyes taking in his surroundings. The Viscount's hand approaches him, showing a gesture of affection and welcome. He gently strokes Ash's head, stating that the child is like a fledgling who doesn't know how to fly on his own yet. With that, Viscount Hyfried commits to taking care of Ash until the moment he decides to fly on his own. Ash's eyes shine with a new determination, absorbing the Viscount's words. The children hide behind furniture, and the woman finds them, laughing at the situation. She asks if the girls were eavesdropping, with a tone of gentle scolding. The girls reply that they were just worried about the baby, with innocent expressions. Then one of the girls asks her mother what the child's name was, full of curiosity. The woman replies with a "let's see," looking lovingly at Ash. She smiles as she thinks of a name for the little one, who is now safe in her arms. The woman decides to name him Aster, a name representing a new star being born in their home. 10 years fly by, showing the Hyfried family mansion and the hustle and bustle in front of the gate. A servant greets Viscount Hyfried respectfully, informing him that they were expecting him. A young Ash, now grown and well-dressed, steps out of the carriage following the Viscount. He wears an elegant suit, with a sword at his waist, looking ready for the event. Aster helps his older sister, Alphen, out of the carriage, telling her to be careful. Alphen thanks Aster for his kindness with a warm smile, and a little angelic halo pops up over her head. The two siblings head towards the mansion, ready to participate in the event side by side. Alphen walks down the street with elegance and poise, with Aster following closely behind. The Sword Dance Festival is an annual event for military nobles, where families showcase their heirs. Young swordsmen, carrying the names of their families, gather for the festival. As the Viscount Hyfried family arrives, people start whispering about them with curiosity. They comment that the family adopted a boy of unknown origin to replace the sons they never had. Other people with red eyes wonder how much further the Hyfried family intends to disgrace the Elmheim name. Aster turns, hearing the murmurs, and realizes they're talking about him. Alphen looks at Aster and advises him not to let the gossip get to him, showing her concern. She warns that, in this place, the weak are the first to be crushed, her hand clenched into a fist. Aster, next to Alphen, remains calm and confident, with a determined look in his eyes. Viscount Hyfried explains that this is the current standing of the Viscount family, as Aster observes him. The Viscount wanted Aster to see the reality of the family, as they approached the grand mansion. He asks Aster if he was disappointed with the situation, looking for his reaction. Our protagonist smiles and replies that he's not disappointed, stating that this chilly reception was just his style. Viscount Hyfried laughs, relieved by Aster's response, showing his confidence in the young man. Aster remembers his past life, where he had a terrible social debut, being the disgrace of the Elmheim family. He now walks with a golden aura, completely different from before, as the 7 wings have returned to his body. Aster's eyes gleam with power, showing his transformation and determination. The 3 of them head towards the mansion with Viscount Hyfried, Aster, and Alphen ready for the festival. 2 young men look out a window with expressions of contempt, watching the Hyfried family arrive. Aster, with a confident look, appears unshaken by the stares and whispers. The trio continues forward, with Aster in the middle, ready for whatever comes at the Sword Dance Festival. Aster smiles confidently, ready to make a spectacular social debut and leave everyone floored. The festival arena is packed, where knights hold absolute power in an age of glory. Knights face off, showcasing their strength and splendor, the requirements for the elite. Their strength came from swordsmanship, the art of the blade they mastered. Their splendor was their fame, the reputation they built with their victories and deeds. 2 knights clash in an intense duel, their swords flashing with every strike. The image shows the ultimate symbol that represents both strength and splendor, the crest of wings. One of the knights kneels in defeat, while the victor displays his magical power. The crest of wings was the ultimate symbol that represented both strength and splendor. In a close-up of the knight's hand, we see the wing crest glowing, showing its power. Aster, alongside Viscount Hyfried and Alphen, comments that the place is just as incredible as it always was. 2 girls complain, saying it's no wonder their sister's friend and Flair didn't want to come. Aster sees the ghosts of his past, being humiliated by his brothers, which ticks him off. The scene shows a young Ash humiliated on the floor, while one of his brothers looks on with disdain. Alphen calls out to Aster, worried about his expression, noticing the change in his face. Alphen asks Aster if he's nervous, since it's his first sword dance festival. Aster smiles and replies that he's not as nervous as she thinks, and that in fact, he feels nostalgic. Alphen looks at Aster with a question mark over her head, not understanding his answer. At this, Viscount Hyfried says he needs to go to a meeting and asks Aster to look after Alphen. Alphen shouts for her father to wait, indignantly reminding him that she's a year older than Aster. Aster smiles and jokes that Alphen can be a bit of a space case, laughing at the situation. Viscount Hyfried explains that there are many young people Alphen's age there, and that she should take the opportunity to make new connections. He warns Aster to ensure the secret of the 7 wings isn't discovered, with a serious look. Alphen, pouting, laments being tasked with making connections, but the hostility around them makes it difficult. Aster notices the hostile stares, thinking it's impossible to socialize with so much animosity. A close-up reveals Aster's determined gaze, ready to face the challenges ahead. Alphen calls out to him, asking where he's going, worried about his impulsive attitude. Aster replies that he's going to make some friends, with a confident smile on his face. He approaches a group of young nobles, one sitting on a sofa and another standing. One of the seated young men asks Aster who he is, in a challenging tone. Aster, with a smile, introduces himself as Aster F. Ilmheim, their younger brother. Dallas, one of the young men, observes him with suspicion, showing no sympathy. Aster explains that he saw him outside and decided to come say hello, being very direct. Dallas, annoyed, asks Groyan if he's the adopted one from the Viscount family. With that, Dallas understands and smiles maliciously, thinking that's why Ash can so brazenly use the F name. Aster sees Dallas and Groyan, the 2 legitimate sons of the Ilmheim family, who offed him in his past life. He thinks that they used to seem terrifying, but now they're just like kids playing grown up. Aster then focuses, his eyes glowing an intense yellow. Alphen approaches, pulling Aster by the arm, saying he's made his greetings and they can go now. Dallas calls out to Alphen, surprised to see her there too, with a smug smile. He taunts Alphen, asking if she doesn't need to hide behind her father today, as usual. Dallas demands that Alphen join them, stating it was an order from the main house, in an authoritarian tone. Alphen remains silent for a moment, her face annoyed and determined. She refuses the order, stating there is no master-servant relationship between the main house and the branch house. Aster grabs Alphen, telling her to wait, sensing the situation was heating up. Dallas grabs Alphen's wrist, arrogantly stating that he's not done talking to her. Aster watches the scene with a serious look, keeping his cool but paying full attention. Dallas smiles maliciously, asking if Alphen knows a certain story. He walks with Alphen through the hall, as she moves away from Aster, looking down. Dallas reveals that Alphen's father had his arm cut off by Roderick to take responsibility for failing to protect the king. He continues, saying he's glad he doesn't have the blood of a loser running through his veins. Alphen, furious, demands that Dallas take back what he said, her voice filled with anger. She confronts Dallas, stating she won't let him speak ill of her father, with determination. Dallas provokes Alphen, saying her father only produces incompetent women who can't inherit a title, and that he must have been disappointed. With a cruel smile, Dallas splashes the drink from his glass in Alphen's face, saying this isn't a ballroom. He suggests that next time she should wear rags, so she won't care if they get wet, humiliating her. Aster, watching from a distance, feels the tension rise as memories of the past flood back. He thought maybe he wouldn't feel anger seeing their faces again after so long. Dallas and Grian enjoy Alphen's humiliation, toasting with wine, without a care in the world. Aster looks at Alphen, whose face is wet and expression is angry, but he feels a strange satisfaction. But Aster can't hold back and sends Dallas flying with a rage that came from the depths of his soul. Furious, Dallas grabs a wine bottle to attack our protagonist, wanting to retaliate for the assault. At the same time, Dallas tries to hit Aster with the bottle, while our protagonist easily dodges the young man's swings. However, Aster is quick and kicks the bottle into his rival's head, causing wine to splash all over Dallas's face. With his opponent stunned, Aster looks at Dallas and the other guys as Grian yells, "Brother!" shocked by what he just saw. After all that, our protagonist wipes his lips and asks if Dallas thought that was just grape juice, with a mocking tone. Aster then smiles and thinks that attitude was perfect for a spoiled noble, completing his humiliation. Meanwhile, a flashback takes us to 3 years ago, with Aster using his power, and someone yelling for him to get a grip. Alphen, crying her eyes out, holds another injured girl and asks if Aster intended to take out his own sisters, calling one of them Kudryavka. Alphen and the other girl are cornered, and one of them screams for the other to stay with her, trying to protect her. From there, Aster unleashes the power of the 7 wings, with a golden, destructive aura, terrifying everyone around. Faced with the situation, Viscount Hyfried wonders if our protagonist could really control that power. Because of this, Aster, with golden eyes and a powerful aura, demonstrates a great magical power that was hidden within him. Back in the present, a servant runs in desperately and yells to Viscount Hyfried that there's an emergency, startling everyone. The Viscount questions him, annoyed at being interrupted during an important meeting, and the servant starts to stammer, unable to explain. The children of the main Elmheim house and the branch house had started a duel, and this news shocked everyone at the meeting. Viscount Hyfried and Duke Roderick exchange surprised looks, not understanding the situation. With that, the Viscount suddenly stands up with an angry look, feeling the atmosphere grow tense. Distressed, Alphen runs to her father, and he asks what the heck is going on, completely confused. The Viscount then points and tells them to look at what's happening, and Dallas appears with a smirk on his face. In the fighting hall, a family feud is breaking out among the Elmheims, something you don't see every day. Viscount Hyfried, Alphen, and Grian watch from above, and the outcome of the fight could change everything. A man with a mustache looks worried, while Grian stands beside him, serious about the situation. Dallas smiles with red eyes and says the sword dance festival is about to get wild. One of the young men from the main house, with red hair, calls Aster a fool for picking a fight with the Duke's house. The red-haired guy raises his sword and shows off his 4-wing crest, a pretty hefty power. With a wicked smile, the duelist challenges him to show his crest, or maybe he was ashamed of it. Our protagonist, his back turned, hears the taunt and says that showing off a mere drawing is ridiculous and embarrassing. Our protagonist smiles and says he would never stoop to doing something so silly, irritating his opponent. The red-haired guy becomes furious, his eyes glowing a shade of red from pure rage. But Aster can't hold back and sends Dallas flying with a rage that came from the depths of his soul. Furious, Dallas grabs a wine bottle to attack our protagonist, wanting to retaliate for the assault. At the same time, Dallas tries to hit Aster with the bottle, while our protagonist easily dodges the young man's swings. However, Aster is quick and kicks the bottle into his rival's head, causing wine to splash all over Dallas's face. With his opponent stunned, Aster looks at Dallas and the other guys as Grian yells, "Brother!" shocked by what he just saw. After all that, our protagonist wipes his lips and asks if Dallas thought that was just grape juice, with a mocking tone. Aster then smiles and thinks that attitude was perfect for a spoiled noble, completing his humiliation. Meanwhile, a flashback takes us to 3 years ago, with Aster using his power, and someone yelling for him to get a grip. Alphen, crying her eyes out, holds another injured girl and asks if Aster intended to take out his own sisters, calling one of them Kudryavka. Alphen and the other girl are cornered, and one of them screams for the other to stay with her, trying to protect her. From there, Aster unleashes the power of the 7 wings with a golden, destructive aura, terrifying everyone around. Faced with the situation, Viscount Hyfried wonders if our protagonist could really control that power. Because of this, Aster, with golden eyes and a powerful aura, demonstrates a great magical power that was hidden within him. In this moment, Dallas is on the ground, and Aster stares him down, demanding that he fight for real. In turn, Aster tells Dallas to show his true power, his voice full of challenge. Viscount Hyfried then smiles, commenting that the fight seems to be decided, observing intently. Aster, with a focused gaze, readies his sword, which glows with a blue energy, ready to attack. With that, Dallas and our protagonist trade ferocious blows, and energy spreads throughout the hall. Dallas is shocked, his eyes wide, not understanding what was happening, as Aster was too strong. In turn, Aster, with a mocking smile, states that Dallas talks way too much, taunting his opponent. Aster then leaps and strikes Dallas with a blow, using a powerful golden energy. Our protagonist stands firm, his sword glowing in intense yellow, ready for the next move. Aster thinks that he trained for 10 years in secret, learning to master his magical power, and he has waited a long time for his revenge. With that, Aster's eyes shine intensely, and he raises his sword, which unleashes a powerful golden aura. He attacks Dallas with a devastating blow, launching a wave of energy that hits him head-on. Dallas then groans in pain, being pushed back by the force of Aster's attack, unable to hold his ground. Grayan, with a shocked expression, realizes his brother is being overpowered, and his concern is evident. Dallas is forcefully pushed back, and Grayan wonders if his brother is really being overwhelmed by the attack. Dallas screams in pain, his face filled with fear, not understanding how a four-wing like him was losing. Aster, with a fixed and determined gaze, continues to land blows on Dallas, his sword gleaming. Viscount Hyfried then smiles, commenting that the fight seems to be decided, observing intently. Aster, with a focused gaze, readies his sword, which glows with a blue energy, ready to attack. With that, Dallas and our protagonist trade ferocious blows, and energy spreads throughout the hall. Dallas is shocked, his eyes wide, not understanding what was happening, as Aster was too strong. In turn, Aster, with a mocking smile, states that Dallas talks way too much, taunting his opponent. Aster then leaps and strikes Dallas with a blow, using a powerful golden energy. Our protagonist stands firm, his sword glowing in intense yellow, ready for the next move. Aster thinks that he trained for 10 years in secret, learning to master his magical power, and he has waited a long time for his revenge. With that, Aster's eyes shine intensely, and he raises his sword, which unleashes a powerful golden aura. He attacks Dallas with a devastating blow, launching a wave of energy that hits him head-on. Dallas then groans in pain, being pushed back by the force of Aster's attack, unable to hold his ground. Grayan, with a shocked expression, realizes his brother is being overpowered, and his concern is evident. Dallas is forcefully pushed back, and Grayan wonders if his brother is really being overwhelmed by the attack. Dallas screams in pain, his face filled with fear, not understanding how a four-winged like him was losing. Aster, with a fixed and determined gaze, continues to land blows on Dallas, his sword gleaming. Aster now thinks that he's no longer that wingless Ash from before. With that, our protagonist smiles, knowing this is enough to put his mind at ease for now. His eyes glow with a red aura of power, showing his fury and determination. Aster then sees Roderick and others on the balcony, watching the fight from a distance. The protagonist feels the rage building inside him, knowing Roderick is nearby. The imposing figure of Roderick appears, and Aster stares him down with a look of pure fury. With a shout, our protagonist calls out to Roderick, challenging him with his gaze. Then, others comment in shock that the youngest son of the tyrannical family defeated the heir of the main house. However, the situation is bad, and the character whose reputation was just crushed isn't going to stay quiet. The head of the main Elmheim house appears. He was a strong and imposing man. Dallas then gets up, showing an arrogant smile, even after being defeated. Aster faces him, his sword pointed at the ground, with a serious and powerful look. Roderick, in turn, looks at the scene with an air of contempt, judging his son. Our protagonist, his eyes glowing red, keeps a fixed gaze on his father. Duke Roderick Aelmium then appears, walking into the hall, ready to confront Aster. Dallas, kneeling, yells "Father," getting Roderick's attention. He points at our protagonist, accusing him of being the bastard who challenged the main house. Dallas pleads with Roderick, who has a furious look, to use his power and punish Aster. At the request, Roderick brutally smashes Dallas's hand into the floor. Dallas, his face a mask of terror, screams in pain as his blood splatters. Grayan and other nobles are shocked by the scene, unable to believe the violence. Roderick then draws his sword, questioning why a loser is begging so foolishly. He states that Dallas has dragged the family name through the mud, humiliating him further. A man who can't get his own revenge, Roderick adds, has no right to hold a sword. With the punishment over, the scene shows the beauty of the hall, with an elegant chandelier. Aster, with a determined look, faces his father, ready for the next move. He then asks Roderick what his father was doing, challenging his actions. Aster then says that his cousin still hasn't apologized to his sister Alphen. Our protagonist asks his uncle to save the punishment for after the apology. Roderick, with a purple aura of rage, asks if he thinks he's an Elmime just because he was adopted by Hyfried. Aster then asserts that he is the son of a viscount, showing his standing. He explains that, regardless of blood ties, he was taught about the pride of a knight and the weight of succession by his adoptive father. Roderick remains silent, observing the protagonist with a look of pure fury. The Duke then points his sword at Aster, stating that a viscount's son has harmed the main house. Roderick reminds him that he is the pinnacle of 12,000 knights and the pride of the king, flaunting his power. Viscount Hyfried, with his arms crossed, watches the scene, thinking that this can't be solved like a kid's squabble. Another viscount comments that Roderick needs to understand the situation as well. A figure with bluish hair just watches from afar, with a mocking smile on his face. Viscount Hyfried then recalls that his father offered an arm as the price for his disloyalty. With Roderick's sword right up to Aster's face, he asks what the protagonist is going to offer. Aster respectfully addresses his uncle, maintaining his composure in the tense situation. Our protagonist then explains that this wasn't a fight between brothers, but a formal duel. He says he merely responded with his sword to the insults made against the Viscount's family, showing his honor. Aster quotes Roderick's own words, "Who cannot get revenge has no right to a sword." He finishes, saying he has no intention of losing a single finger, challenging his father with determination. Roderick then stares down our protagonist and agrees with a slight smile, having understood the boy's audacity. Next, the Duke orders Aster to get in his stance, his voice firm, preparing for the fight. Our protagonist, surprised, gets ready for combat, gripping his sword tightly, alert to his father's movements. His eyes widen at the intensity of Roderick's aura, sensing the imminent danger. Roderick attacks with full force, and his sword shatters the floor, kicking up a cloud of debris with the blow. Alphen, terrified, covers her mouth with her hands, her eyes filled with tears, worried for her brother. Seeing this, Viscount Hyfried yells Roderick's name, showing his fury and disapproval of his actions. The Viscount then leaps into the air, attacking Roderick with his sword, trying to stop him. The two men's swords clash with force, creating a flash in the hall, showing the power of the collision. Viscount Hyfried continues his assault, forcing Roderick to retreat with a series of quick and powerful strikes. He then shouts for Aster, asking if he was okay, his voice full of worry and affection. The floor is completely shattered, and pieces of ice are scattered across the hall, showing the destruction of the fight. Viscount Hyfried looks at the floor in shock, his eyes wide, unable to believe what he sees. Aster, fallen and wounded on the ground, his face bleeding, has his eyes glowing with pure fury and determination. His eyes emanate a golden power, and he's not giving up, despite the clear pain on his face. Roderick then decides the punishment will be severe and without mercy. With that, he descends the stairs and Dallas, on the floor, watches with a smile, satisfied with the punishment to come. Viscount Hyfried then calls out to Aster, scolding him for his action. The Viscount grabs our protagonist, worried about what his brother would do to him. Our protagonist, with a bloodied face, tells his father that he protected the promise and everything else, showing his loyalty. The Viscount then praises our protagonist, saying he was magnificent despite his injuries. Roderick continues down the stairs, not caring about the fight between the kids, with Dallas following close behind. Meanwhile, Viscount Hyfried comments that Roderick's actions were immature, disagreeing with his brother. Another noble argues that the main house's reputation would be ruined if they let a child do whatever he wanted. The noble also thinks this was a great moment for Aster, who is standing up to Roderick. Aster, with a determined and fearless look, faces Roderick, ready to survive this challenge and become a rising star. A noble comments that, for the boy, it's the perfect social debut. Viscount Hyfried confesses he was terrified, thinking Roderick was going to split Aster in two right there. However, Roderick thinks that the age of revolt is approaching, and a storm strong enough to split the world in 2 or 3 is imminent. Alphen, frightened, clings to Aster and the Viscount, worried about the uncertain future. One of the men praises Aster, saying he's brilliant and has incredible talent. Aster then looks up with a confused expression, listening to the man's words. The man continues to praise our protagonist, saying he's only 10 years old, and that's terrifying. Another man agrees, commenting that Aster has been even more emphatic in his training since returning from the festival. He thinks it must have been good motivation for the boy, seeing his progress. A third man recalls that our protagonist defeated Duke Roderick's third son, a great achievement. He states that they've had to swallow a lot of bitter pills from the main house. So Aster's story is refreshing. Our protagonist then runs with a staff in hand, training hard. He thinks that with Viscount Hyfrid backing him, the Elmham name of the main house should quiet down a bit. But Aster's real target is, ultimately, the Elmham family. He continues to train and wanted to test his true strength. Aster then attacks a man with his staff, showing his agility and power. The protagonist thinks that he wanted to test his power more in that place. However, as he is now, he can't defeat Roderick. To him, the crest of wings is just an indicator of the rank of his hidden magical power. Aster is then scolded for making a scene again, as he's always fighting. Alphen approaches with a smile, asking if our protagonist doesn't know the meaning of moderation, and that their father is calling for him. Our protagonist replies that he understands and will go immediately. While Alphen takes the staff he was holding, Aster then notices Alphen's outfit with a surprised look. Seeing her in training clothes, Alphen turns with a little, not understanding his reaction. Aster comments that this is rare, as she said she wouldn't wear that outfit because it wasn't cute. Alphen explains that balance is important in everything, and seeing our protagonist, she thought she couldn't just stand by. With that, Aster is surprised and Alphen smiles at him. Alphen then tells Aster that when he gets back, he'll have to keep her company for a good while so they can train together. Our protagonist smiles at his sister, happy with the training proposal. Aster tells her to take it easy, and then Alphen and our protagonist start training together. At this, Aster approaches the door to Viscount Hyfrid's study and knocks. He asks for permission to enter, and the Viscount is seated, waiting for him. Aster asks his father what he needed in a respectful tone. Viscount Hyfrid then invites him to sit, with a welcoming smile on his face. The Viscount then thoughtfully asks if it's already been 10 years since they welcomed our protagonist into their home. He confesses that he thought about waiting until Aster was older, but the situation calls for haste. Then, the Viscount takes out a ring with a red stone, which intrigues our protagonist. The Viscount looks at Aster and reveals that the ring is proof of the successor, something of great importance. Our protagonist looks at the ring, his eyes shining golden, unable to express anything. Aster and the Viscount are seated at the table, and he explains that the Viscount house is in a delicate position. He reminds him that they are still a branch house, but carry the burden of the Elmham family name. The Viscount continues, saying they are lords with a territory to protect, and they cannot leave the post empty. He asks our protagonist if his sisters were convinced by the decision. The Viscount replies that the sisters, who are at the Knight Academy, will be back in 3 days. He intends to talk to everyone at that time, including the sisters. Aster remembers Malphur and Kudo, and fears that the two won't be happy with the news. He thinks that Kudo, in particular, will be very angry. The Viscount thinks that Kudo hates Aster, because he was born a man and was blessed with the 7 wings. Our protagonist then reflects that he can't accept the ring, as he still can't control his magical power. Aster then thinks he doesn't have the confidence to convince a sister, who has already attacked him. Viscount Hyfrid watches him with a smile, as if he knows what the boy is thinking. He comments that he has long doubted whether Aster is really a child, due to his maturity. The Viscount reveals that he intended to give the ring as a reward for the Sword Dance Festival. He then takes out a wooden box, and our protagonist watches him, curious. Aster, surprised, wonders what that is, his eyes wide with curiosity. The Viscount presents the demon sword Gram, a legendary magic sword. It is capable of containing the power of the 7 wings, which is why it's known as the magic, devouring sword. Afterward, the Viscount takes Aster to a more remote spot in the forest to test the sword. Our protagonist asks if the dojo wouldn't be enough if his father just wanted to show him a sword. The Viscount replies that this is a precaution, as Aster has a habit of destroying things, remembering a flashback. He explains that the demon sword Gram is a legendary blade passed down only to the eldest son of the Elmham family. The Viscount says he brought it from the main house specifically for our protagonist. Aster then, shocked, wonders if that's a sword, his eyes wide. The Viscount explains that the sword has no physical blade, and that Aster must pour his magic into it, making the sword glow. The Viscount explains that Gram is a blade of possibilities, completed by the user's magic. Aster releases his magic, and the sword glows red, showing its power. A circle of energy forms, pushing away the surrounding leaves with the force of the magic. The Viscount warns that if the magic is insufficient, the sword could drain him completely. He then asks if Aster wants to give it a try, and our protagonist faces the sword with determination. Our protagonist takes Gram, ready to use it, his hands firm on the hilt. He focuses on his magic and the sword, concentrating all his power into it. A huge wave of energy is released, and Aster wonders what that is, shocked. He then realizes that his magic is flowing into the sword on its own. A wave of red energy shoots up into the heavens, leaving a trail in the blue sky. A guard asks, shocked, what that light was and if a comet had fallen. The other guard corrects him, saying it's the opposite, and something was launched into the sky. Alphen, with a smile on her face, realizes that must be our protagonist training. Aster, with a smile, comments that this is an incredible sword, but Viscount Hayfried says that what's most incredible is Aster's own power. Viscount Hayfried explains that what's most incredible is our protagonist's power. He continues, saying that Aster possesses the 7-wing crest, something unheard of in the entire history of the Elmheim lineage. If our protagonist masters this power, he will surpass Roderick and the Viscount himself, even though they are both 6 wings. Aster then envisions Roderick and wonders if he will surpass him. However, the Viscount warns that excessive power always plants the seeds of conflict. If people find out Aster has the 7 wings, many will envy and resent him. The Viscount warns that some will try to use him, while others will try to eliminate him. He then extends a hand to our protagonist, worried about the future. The Viscount advises Aster to become stronger while he still can, so he won't regret his powerlessness. Aster then shakes the Viscount's hand, saying he won't live a miserable life like his last one. He thanks his father, showing his gratitude for his help and trust. Aster vows that he will make the 7 wings and the sword his own. 3 days later, the Viscount, his wife, and Alphen welcome the 2 sisters who have returned home. Kudryavka appears, with her sister Malfa behind her, and announces her return in a cheerful tone. The other sister, Malfa, coughs, hiding her suspicion about the reunion. Kudryavka smiles and holds out her arms, calling her little sisters for a reunion hug. However, the 2 girls ignore her and hug Malfa, leaving Kudryavka out. Kudryavka, surprised, asks where her hug is, not understanding the snub. The sisters reply that Sister Kudryavka always messes up their hair, which is why they didn't hug her. Kudryavka, indignant, denies it, saying she has mastered knighthood and would never be clumsy. Next, Kudryavka notices Alphen watching the scene with a discreet smile. Kudryavka jumps on Alphen, asking if she's been a good girl, with a tight hug. Alphen, suffocating, wonders why Kudryavka is pestering her, not understanding her sister. Malfa then asks where Ash is, looking around, searching for her brother. Viscount Hayfried then replies that our protagonist is busy training. Kudryavka looks at Alphen with a serious expression, suspicious of something. Meanwhile, a huge explosion of red magic hits the ground, coming from the forest. Aster is panting, exhausted from training, but still on his feet, determined to continue. Annoyed, he wonders if this is the best he can do, unsatisfied with his performance. Our protagonist thinks that even though he can form the blade with magic, just suppressing it completely drains him. Aster, with a wind shield around him, wonders what he needs to do to be like his father. Kudryavka appears, complaining that our protagonist is making a mess over here. Aster, surprised, asks if Sister Kudryavka is already back, not believing she's there. Kudryavka asks why our protagonist didn't come to greet her, finding him cold. With an ironic smile, she asks if he's so special now that he can't even see her. Kudryavka mentions she heard about Aster's performance at the Sword Dance Festival, and that the Knight Academy is buzzing with rumors about him. She concludes that their father must be proud of our protagonist. Aster retorts that she has no room to talk, as she's already been on several missions, even as just an apprentice. Kudryavka then shows off her brooch, an honorary knight's badge that only she received this year. She states that if she didn't do so much, she wouldn't be worthy of succeeding their father. Aster falls silent, not knowing what to say about his sister, with dallies on his mind. Kudryavka asks if he refused the succession, thinking she was doing him a favor. With an annoyed look, our protagonist thinks that his father told her, and that dealing with this is a pain. Aster replies that it wasn't his intention, and that he just felt he wasn't qualified. Kudryavka then attacks him with her sword, unleashing a magical power of blue light. Aster dodges the attack and wonders why his sister did that, shocked by the assault. Kudryavka then tells Aster to get ready, as she's going to give him a little test. With a challenging smile, she warns that next time she'll come at him for real. Aster asks his sister to wait, explaining that his sword is still incomplete. Kudryavka asks if he'll give the same excuse to enemies on the battlefield, with a serious look. Aster, surprised, thinks about the word enemies, realizing his sister's seriousness. Kudryavka reminds him that the first rule of knighthood is to always be ready for battle. She warns that if Aster keeps holding back, she might end up crushing him. Our protagonist thinks that his sister isn't kidding, but he's already at his limit, just controlling his magic. However, he has no choice. If he doesn't fight back, she really will crush him. Aster faces his sister, who attacks him with an energy sword, and he thinks she's going to take him out.